Do you know what happened in the summer of 1941 in the city of Smolensk? The First Battle of Smolensk was a turning point in the second phase of Operation Barbarossa, the Axis invasion of the Soviet Union during World War II. It was a battle fought around the city of Smolensk, roughly 250 miles west of Moscow. Now, the strategic importance of Smolensk cannot be overstated. This city was a crucial transportation center, with several key rail lines and highways converging there. It was also a significant barrier to the German advance towards Moscow. The Austere, the German army, had their eyes set on it. They had already advanced a staggering 310 miles into the USSR in just 18 days after the invasion kicked off on June 22, 1941. Smolensk was their next target. On the other side were the Soviet forces, ready to defend their homeland. They were underprepared, under-equipped, and caught off guard by the rapid advance of the German Austere. Yet, they were determined to stand their ground. The Soviet High Command knew that losing Smolensk could open the gates to Moscow, and they were not ready to let that happen. The stage for the battle was set. Two formidable forces, the German Austere and the Soviet Red Army, were about to lock horns in what was to become a significant battle on the Eastern Front. The stakes were high. For the Germans, it was another step towards the heart of the Soviet Union, Moscow. For the Soviets, it was a fight for survival, a battle to defend their homeland and keep the German forces at bay. In the midst of this, the city of Smolensk stood, a symbol of strategic importance and a testament to the resilience of its inhabitants. It was a city that was about to witness one of the most significant battles of the Eastern Front. As the German forces closed in, the stage was set for one of the pivotal battles of the Eastern Front. The German forces made their move on the 10th of July, 1941. In the early dawn, the Austere, the German army, initiated an audacious encirclement strategy. Their objective? The city of Smolensk, a strategic point approximately 250 miles west of Moscow. The German forces, having advanced over 300 miles into the USSR in the 18 days following the invasion, were now poised to deliver a decisive blow. The German encirclement strategy was a classic pincer movement, a tactic as old as warfare itself. The aim was to envelop the enemy, to encircle them completely, cutting off all lines of retreat and communication. This strategy required speed, coordination, and the ability to react quickly to changes on the battlefield. The German forces, seasoned by previous campaigns, were well equipped for the task. However, the Soviet forces in Smolensk were not to be underestimated. They were determined to hold their ground, to defend their homeland against the invading force. The city was a fortress protected by the Dnieper and Dvina rivers, and the Soviet soldiers were prepared to fight to the last man. The stage was set for a fierce and bloody conflict. The initial engagements of the battle were intense. The German forces pushed forward, their tanks and infantry working in tandem to probe the Soviet defenses. The Soviets responded with tenacity, their artillery and machine guns inflicting heavy casualties on the advancing Germans. Yet, as the battle raged, the German encirclement began to take effect. The Soviet forces, despite their ferocious resistance, found themselves increasingly hemmed in. Their lines of communication were cut, their supplies dwindling. The German pincer movement was closing in, the jaws of the trap beginning to tighten. This was the brutal reality of warfare on the Eastern Front, a deadly dance of maneuver and countermaneuver, of attack and defense. The stakes were high, the margin for error slim. And as the first moves of the battle concluded, it was clear that the struggle for Smolensk was only just beginning. Despite fierce resistance, the Soviet forces found themselves increasingly surrounded. As the days passed, the battle around Smolensk grew fiercer. The Axis forces, under the banner of Operation Barbarossa, had pushed deep into Soviet territory. But around the city of Smolensk, roughly 250 miles west of Moscow, the relentless march forward began to falter. The Soviet forces, encircled and seemingly on the brink of defeat, fought back with a ferocity that surprised their adversaries. Key skirmishes broke out in pockets around the city, each one a testament to the growing intensity of the battle. The struggle was not merely for territory, but for survival. The Soviets, despite the odds, were not ready to relinquish their hold on Smolensk without a fight. As the battle raged on, the toll it was taking on both sides became increasingly apparent. The Austrians, despite their initial gains, suffered significant losses. The front line, once a seemingly unstoppable force, was now noticeably thinning. Meanwhile, the Soviets, despite their tenacity, were also paying a heavy price. Encircled and cut off from reinforcements, their numbers dwindled with each passing day. Yet despite the hardships, the spirit of the Soviet forces remained unbroken. They fought on, their resolve fueled by a desperate determination. Each skirmish, no matter how small, was a battle for their very existence. They were not merely defending Smolensk. They were defending their homes, their loved ones, their way of life. It was a battle of attrition, a war of endurance. Every day brought new challenges, new struggles, and new losses. But with each passing day, the Soviets also grew more determined, more resilient. They understood the stakes. They understood what they were fighting for, and they were not ready to give up. The battle around Smolensk was a testament to the human spirit, to the will to survive against all odds. It was a testament to the courage and determination of the Soviet forces, who, despite being encircled and outnumbered, continued to fight on. But even as the situation seemed dire, the Soviets were not ready to give up. In late July, the Soviets began a daring counteroffensive. The Soviet Union, despite being on the back foot, was far from defeated. Their resolve hardened. They planned a daring counteroffensive to break the encircling German forces. It was a bold move. Some might even call it reckless, but then again, desperate times often call for desperate measures. The Soviet forces, with a show of unyielding grit, launched relentless attacks on the German lines. The intensity of the assault was such that it took the Germans by surprise. The Red Army, showing no signs of slowing down, continued to pound the German lines, hoping to create a breach large enough for their comrades to escape the encirclement. However, the German response was swift and brutal. They tightened their grip around the encircled Soviet forces, effectively cutting them off from the rest of the Red Army. Despite the relentless pressure from the Soviets, the German lines held firm. It was a testament to their discipline and tactical acumen. But the Soviets were not deterred. They continued their attempts to break free from the encirclement. Soldiers pushed forward with sheer determination, fighting for every inch of ground. It was a brutal dance of death and survival, with both sides refusing to yield. This counter-offensive, although not entirely successful in breaking the encirclement, had a profound impact on the overall course of the battle. It disrupted the German advance, buying the Red Army precious time. It also served to boost the morale of the Soviet soldiers, proving to them that the German forces were not invincible. Moreover, this counteroffensive marked a turning point in the battle. It signaled a shift in the momentum. The Red Army, although still on the defensive, was now showing signs of a resurgence. They were not going down without a fight. They were ready to take the battle to the Germans. The counteroffensive had mixed results, but it marked a turning point in the battle. This counteroffensive was the spark that ignited the Soviet resistance, turning the tide of the Battle of Smolensk and indeed the entire course of the war. By the 10th of September, the First Battle of Smolensk was over. The dust settled over the ravaged city, the echoes of gunfire and artillery now replaced with a somber silence. The battle, lasting a grueling 2 months, had finally drawn to its inevitable close. The cost of this engagement was staggering. Losses on both sides were enormous, with the Axis forces and the Red Army paying a heavy price in both manpower and machinery. The battlefields of Smolensk were littered with the remains of tanks, aircraft, and the fallen soldiers who had fought valiantly for their respective causes. But beyond the immediate physical toll, the Battle of Smolensk had profound strategic implications for the Eastern Front. The fierce Soviet resistance had managed to stall the German advance towards Moscow, buying the Red Army valuable time to regroup and fortify their defenses. The Austrians, on the other hand, had been forced to divert significant resources and manpower to subdue Smolensk, delaying their push towards the Soviet capital. Yet the Battle of Smolensk was more than just a military engagement. It was a testament to the resilience of the human spirit, to the courage of the men and women who stood their ground in the face of overwhelming odds. It was a battle that showcased the grim realities of war, the sacrifices made, and the lives forever changed. And its impact was felt well beyond the confines of the Eastern Front. The Battle of Smolensk served as a sobering reminder of the true cost of warfare. It marked a turning point in World War II, a moment when the seemingly unstoppable German war machine was brought to a halt, if only momentarily, by the determined resistance of the Soviet forces. And so, the Battle of Smolensk ended, but its echoes would be felt throughout the rest of the war. It was a pivotal moment, a testament to the courage and resilience of those who fought, and a stark reminder of the devastation that warfare can bring.